sun's barely up and the asphalt's already ticking. A man sitting in a car that hit 140 degrees inside, 60 degrees in Celsius terms, before he even cracked a window. That's not a stat about a kid left in a hot car. That's what a closed vehicle does to anybody who doesn't understand airflow. Now here's the flip side of that same coin. $99. That's what it costs for a whole year to sleep somewhere legal, somewhere safe, somewhere nobody's knocking on your window at 2 in the morning. One night at a decent RV park costs more than that. I've seen the receipts, $65, $70 for one night on a gravel pad next to a stranger's motorhome. And in 2024, the Supreme Court ruled that a city can arrest you just for sleeping outside with a blanket, even if there's no shelter bed waiting for you. So, legal doesn't mean what it used to mean. It means something specific now, something you have to build on purpose. Stick with me, because the last piece of this system is the one that costs less than a fast food meal, and it's the one that actually gets you through the worst night of summer. Stay with me. If you've ever done the math on a motel room versus a car full of your own stuff, subscribe. This is the channel that keeps you legal, cool, and out of trouble for less than $100 a year. I've spent more nights than I care to count with the seats folded down and my boots for a pillow. I'm not going to stand here and tell you it's comfortable. I'm here to tell you what actually works, what actually holds up when a cop taps your window, and what's a waste of your last $20. Let's get into it. Most folks hear sleeping in your car and think the answer is simple. Go to a shelter. That's the fix everybody reaches for first, and I understand why. A roof, walls, somebody else worrying about the locks. But here's the honest truth about shelters, and it's the same truth the Supreme Court itself argued over in that 2024 case. In most cities, there aren't enough beds. Not close. Add a curfew you can't make because you work nights. Add a sobriety rule. Add the fact that most shelters won't take a couple together, won't take your dog, won't take the one bag that's got everything you own left in it. For a lot of people, the shelter door is locked before they even get there, not because of a bad decision, because of a full building. Now I'll give shelters their due. On a night when the heat advisory is flashing red, a lot of them open up overflow space, low barrier, no questions. And nothing beats 4 walls and a staff member down the hall when your safety's the real concern. So it's not that shelters are useless, it's that they solve a different problem than the one most vehicle dwellers actually have most nights of the year. Here's the principle underneath everything I'm about to show you, and I want you to hear it plain before we go any further. Legality out here isn't about where you park. It's about whose permission you're operating under. Public land, empty lot, quiet street, no permission attached, that's a gamble, even when nobody's around to see you. Private land, with somebody's actual say-so, that's safe, even parked in the middle of a city block. That's the whole game, not location. Permission, hold on to that because it's going to come back around twice more before we're done. Now, let's talk about what the sun does to a closed car, because this matters more in July than any lock or ordinance. A parked car is a greenhouse. Sunlight comes through the glass easy. It hits the seats, the dash, the steering wheel, and turns into heat. That heat wants to radiate back out, but it can't get through the glass the same way it came in. So it stays, traps itself. That's why a car sitting in a lot can run 50 degrees hotter inside than the air outside it. That's about 28 degrees Celsius hotter, and it can get there in under 20 minutes. Heat exhaustion starts around 100.4 degrees. That's 38.5 Celsius core body temperature. Heat strokes the danger zone, around 104.40 Celsius. Past 107, that's near 42 Celsius, you're looking at a body that's failing. That's not a threat I'm throwing at you to scare you. That's the actual number your body's working against every time you close a car door in July. So the system I'm about to walk you through fights 2 things at once. It fights being seen, and it fights the sun cooking you while you sleep, and it does both for under $100 a year. Start with what costs nothing, because most nights, this is all you'll need. Truck stops, the pilots, the flying J's, the loves, they want you there. Free parking, no permission needed, lit up all night, and their whole business model is built around people sleeping in vehicles and buying coffee in the morning. That's not charity. That's just how the business works, and it works in your favor. Rest areas are free too, but nearly every one of them has a posted time limit, and that number is different in every state. I'm not going to give you one number and let you get comfortable with it, because the sign changes state to state, sometimes county to county. Read it every single time. Don't assume. Then there's the parking lot everybody thinks of first, Walmart. Used to be a blanket, yes, company-wide, park anywhere, anytime. Not anymore. It's a per-store call now, the manager's call, and a real chunk of stores, somewhere over 1,000 of them nationwide, have quietly said no. Call ahead, ask. Don't roll in at midnight assuming the old rules still apply, because they don't, not everywhere. If you can get out toward public land, there's a better option, and it's fully free. BLM land, National Forest land, dispersed camping, no permit, no fee, most of it wide open. There's one rule that matters. 14 days in any 28-day stretch, then you move at least 25 miles to reset the clock. Folks try to push that limit and stay anyway. Don't. That's turning a free, clean, fully legal option into a citation for absolutely no reason. Move the 25 miles. It costs you gas, not your record. And there's a piece of infrastructure most people don't even know exists. Safe parking programs, real, named, currently running in roughly 35 cities across 10 states. Culver City runs a nighttime safe parking permit program. Santa Barbara and Goleta run New Beginnings, 154 spaces spread across 26 separate lots. Denver Metro's got the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative. These aren't rumors. These are cities that looked at vehicle dwelling and decided to build something for it instead of just writing tickets. Restrooms, security, sometimes a caseworker who can point you toward what's next. That's proof this isn't just tolerance dressed up as a favor. Some places are actually building the on-ramp. Notice what all of that free tier stuff has in common, though. Every single piece of it is conditional. A truck stop welcomes you tonight and might not care tomorrow. A rest area is fine for 4 hours and a violation on hour 5. Even BLM land runs out after 14 days. None of it is permission, not the real kind. It's tolerance, and tolerance can end without warning. Your grandparents knew the difference between being invited somewhere and just not being told to leave yet. That difference is the whole ballgame out here, which is where the $79 comes in. There's a membership network called Boondockers Welcome. 3,600 host locations, private landowners, driveways, back acreage, quiet rural lots, all across the U.S. and Canada, and every single one of them has explicitly said, yes, come park here overnight for free, no camping fee attached, $79 a year, and that's the entire cost, unlimited stays across the whole network for that one flat fee. Here's why this is the strongest move in the whole system. It isn't gray area. It isn't a sign you're hoping nobody reads too closely. It's written permission on private property, which means the city's camping ordinance never even enters the conversation. Those ordinances are built to police public land and the public right-of-way. You're not on public land. You're a guest on somebody's private lot, invited, expected, welcome. That flips the entire legal picture. I've pulled into a stranger's driveway before with nothing but an email confirming I was expected and slept better than I had in a week, because for once, nobody could tell me to move. Now I'll give you the honest limits too, because I'm not going to oversell a membership card. Most hosts offer one night, some will stretch to 2, a few go further, but that's between you and that host. Not a guarantee the membership prints for you. Coverage skews rural and suburban. If you need to be inside a dense downtown every night, this isn't going to carry you every single time. But do the math with me for 1 second. One night at a mid-range RV park runs $60 to $90. The membership costs $79 for the entire year. It pays for itself the very first time you use it instead of paying a park. Every stay after that is pure savings and pure legal footing besides. That's permission, showing up for the second time. Once in the free stack, where everything's conditional. Now here in the membership, where for the first time, somebody's actually handed you a key instead of just looking the other way. Last piece of the system, and this is the part that costs the least and does double duty. On the free and gray nights, the rest area, the tolerant lot, the quiet street where you're technically allowed but you'd rather not be noticed, 2 things matter. Not looking like a problem and not cooking in your own car. One kit handles both. A static cling privacy film, the removable kind, no adhesive, nothing permanent, runs about $17. It blocks the sightline into your car, so from the outside, it just looks like tinted glass, not somebody's bedroom. And because it's reflective, it bounces a chunk of that sunlight back out before it ever turns into trapped heat. Pair that with a small 12-volt fan, plugs right into your accessory outlet, runs you somewhere between $18 and $29 depending on where you shop. I clip mine over the door handle so it blows straight across my face all night. That fan does the other half of the job. The film stops sunlight from getting in. The fan physically pushes the hot trapped air out and pulls cooler air in through a cracked window. Two ends of the same fight. Add it up, $79 for the membership, call it $18 to $20 for the film and the fan. $96 to $99, under $100 for the whole year. Here's who doesn't want you to know any of this. It's not one company, not one villain you can put a face to. It's quieter than that. Cities feel pressure, especially in tourist strips and shopping districts, to make homelessness invisible. Not solved. Invisible. A camping ban does that job cheap. It doesn't cost the city a dime to build a shelter bed. It just costs somebody else their spot on the block. And after Grants Pass versus Johnson, decided June of 2024, 6 votes to 3, the Supreme Court said cities can enforce those bans even when there aren't enough shelter beds to go around. That's not a hypothetical. That's the actual argument the losing side made in that case. And it lost. So now every city in the country has the green light to lean harder on push it out of sight instead of pay to fix it. Meanwhile, the RV park down the road charges you $65 a night and has zero interest in you finding out there's a $79 alternative sitting right next to it. Nobody signed a memo. Nobody needed to. A city that doesn't want to pay for shelter beds and an industry that doesn't want you to know about the cheap legal option, they don't have to talk to each other. They just both benefit from you never hearing what I just told you. That's not a conspiracy. That's just what happens when nobody in power has a reason to speak up for you. Now, let me get serious for a minute, because this next part matters more than any of the money I just walked you through. Never nap in a closed parked car sitting in direct sun without airflow. That's the line. Not be careful. Not use your judgment. If you cannot get real airflow moving through that car, do not sleep in it in the daytime heat. Find a cooling center. Find shade with a breeze. A cracked window and a shade in full sun midday is not the same setup as a shaded, ventilated spot overnight, and I need you to hear that difference. I'm not going to be the man who gets you hurt to sell you a fan. And while I've got you serious, let's clear out the bad advice you've probably already seen. Somebody out there is going to tell you to just idle the engine and run the air conditioning to sleep comfortable. Don't. If there's any exhaust leak, any gap in the system you can't see, that's carbon monoxide filling a sealed cabin around you while you sleep. People die from that every single year. Real people, not a statistic on a warning label. There's no safe version of that trick. Cut it out of your plan entirely. Somebody else is going to tell you to tint every window dark as you can get it, so nobody can see in at all. Don't do that either. Most states cap how dark your front windows can legally go. Texas caps it at 25%. Florida's at 28% on the front passenger side. New York and California want 70% or lighter. No state lets you go dark on the windshield above the AS1 line. Do that, and you've traded a parking risk for a traffic stop. And a traffic stop is worse, because now an officer's got a legal reason to pull you over before he's even looked at where you slept. Stick to the removable static cling. It does the job without breaking a single tint law. And last one. Don't park on a lot with a posted no overnight sign and just hope nobody notices. That's trespassing. Plain and simple. Zero legal shield. The exact opposite of everything this whole system is built on. Compare that to the Boondocker's welcome host who's expecting you. One's a gamble. One's an invitation. I know what some of you are thinking watching this. You're thinking, people really do die of heat stroke in cars, and here's a video telling folks to sleep in one. Fair question. That's exactly why the film and the fan and the cracked window are built for shaded, ventilated overnight parking, not sealed midday sun. If you can't get airflow, you don't sleep in the car, full stop. I said that a minute ago, and I meant it. Some of you are also thinking, what if a host doesn't show or a spot falls through? That's real too, which is why you keep the free tier stack in your back pocket the whole time. The truck stop, the rest area with the posted limit, the BLM land within its 14 days. The membership is your best option. It's never your only option. So here's the piece I told you to stick around for. Of everything in this system, the film and the fan is the cheapest thing you'll ever buy, and it might be the one that matters most on the worst night of the summer. Not because it's fancy, because it's the difference between a car that's a greenhouse with you locked inside it and a car that's just a shaded breathing box you can actually sleep in. $17 of removable film, $18 of fan. That's it. That's the whole upgrade. And it's the one piece that turns every other spot on this list, free or paid, into somewhere you can actually survive the heat in. Let me walk you through what that $17 of film actually does, because I want you to picture it, not just hear the number. It comes rolled up tight in a mailing tube about the size of a wrapping paper roll. No glue, no spray adhesive, no heat gun. You wet the glass down with a spray bottle, water, and a drop of dish soap, lay the film flat against it, and use a plastic card, an old gift card works fine, to push the water out from underneath. That's it. It clings there on static and surface tension alone, the same way a wet piece of paper sticks to a bathroom mirror. Peel a corner up in 6 months if you want to move it to a different window. No residue, no scraper. That matters more than it sounds like it should, because the second you install something permanent on that glass, you've crossed into a different legal category entirely. Adhesive tint film, the kind a shop installs with a squeegee and a heat gun, that's regulated by percentage, how much visible light it lets through, and every state's got its own number. Removable cling film isn't in that conversation at all. It's not installed. It's not permanent. A police officer looking at your windows from the outside sees glass that looks a shade darker, not a violation he can write a citation for. That's the whole reason I tell people to spend their money there and nowhere else. Now, think about what's happening on the other side of that glass once the film's up and the fan's running. Air doesn't just sit still in a parked car, not if you set it up right. Crack the window on the downwind side about 2 inches, run the fan blowing outward instead of inward, and you've built yourself a slow current. Hot air near the roof gets pulled out the crack, cooler air gets pulled in low, near the floor, where it's always a few degrees behind the cabin around it. I've laid there at 10 at night with that little motor humming against the doorframe and felt the difference inside 20 minutes. Not cold, never cold in July, but moving. And moving air off your skin is the whole trick, because your body cools itself by sweating, and sweat only works if there's air passing over it to carry the heat away. Dead still air, sealed up, and your own sweat just sits there doing nothing. That's the difference between surviving the night and not. Let's sit with the Grants Pass ruling for a second longer, because I don't think most people understand what actually changed. Before that decision, lower courts had generally held that you couldn't punish someone for an involuntary status, being homeless, the same way you can't punish someone for having a disease. The city of Grants Pass, Oregon, argued the ordinance didn't target the status of being homeless. It targeted the act of camping, sleeping outside with so much as a blanket or a pillow. 6 justices agreed with the city, 3 didn't. And the 3 who dissented made a point I think is worth you hearing plain. Justice Sotomayor wrote that sleeping is a biological necessity, not a crime, and punishing someone for it when they have nowhere else to go is, in her words, unconscionable and unconstitutional. That argument lost, 6-3. Which means, as of June 28, 2024, a city doesn't need to prove you have another option before it finds you, tows your car, or arrests you for sleeping in it. That single sentence is why everything I've told you tonight matters. It's not theory. It's the actual ground you're standing on. Here's a scene I want you to picture because it's a real one, not a story about somebody, just what actually happens. You pull up to a Flying J around midnight. Lots half full, semis lined up along the back fence, a scattering of regular cars and vans further up near the building, engines off, curtains up. Nobody bothers you. Nobody's supposed to. That lot is designed on purpose by the company that owns it for exactly what you're doing. The lights stay on all night for a reason, not to watch you, to keep the lot safe enough that nobody has to. Compare that to pulling into a rest area an hour before dawn instead. Same idea on the surface, empty spot, quiet, dark. But that little sign at the entrance, the one most people drive right past without reading, it might say 4 hours. It might say 8. In a few states it says nothing at all, and silence isn't permission, it's just a gap nobody's filled in yet. I've learned to read that sign every single time, even at places I've stopped a dozen times before, because a county can change the posted limit and never tell anybody but the sign itself. Now, sit with the Walmart shift for a second, because it's a bigger deal than it sounds like at first. For years, the policy was simple enough that people barely thought about it. Company-wide, park overnight, and nobody blinks. That reputation still follows the brand around, which is exactly the problem, because the policy underneath it quietly changed and the reputation didn't catch up. It's the store manager's call now, lot by lot, and community-tracked lists put the number of stores that have said no somewhere north of 1,000 out of around 4,600 total. That means 1 in 5, roughly, and rising. I've had a manager wave me toward a corner of the lot without a second thought, and I've had a different manager at a different store. Same chain, same logo, ask me to move along inside the hour. Same brand, different rules. That's not a knock on the company. It's just the reality of a policy that used to be predictable and now depends entirely on who's working that night. Call the store. Ask at customer service if you're already inside. Don't stake your night on a memory of how things used to work. Let's go a layer deeper on the safe parking programs too, because I gave you the names and the numbers, but I want you to understand what actually happens once you're inside one of those lots. New Beginnings out of Santa Barbara and Goleta isn't just a fence and a gate. 154 spaces spread across 26 separate lots means it's woven into the actual neighborhoods, church lots, non-profit lots, sometimes a business that donates its back 40 spaces overnight. Case managers show up on a rotation, not to check up on you like a warden, but because the program's whole design assumes the parking spot is a bridge, not a destination. Culver City runs its version as an actual permit, a piece of paper that says you're allowed to be exactly where you are at exactly the hours you're there. That paper is worth more than it looks like. An officer who pulls up to a permitted lot at 2 in the morning isn't deciding whether you're trespassing. He's confirming a program the city itself set up and funded. That's about as far from a gray area as this entire subject gets. I want to say the carbon monoxide warning again, differently this time, because I don't think one pass is enough for something that kills quietly. Carbon monoxide doesn't smell like anything. It doesn't look like anything. It doesn't announce itself with a cough or a headache until you're already in trouble, and by the time you're in trouble, you're often too disoriented to fix it yourself. That's what makes an idling engine in a closed car so much more dangerous than it feels in the moment. It feels like comfort, cool air, quiet hum, nothing wrong. The exhaust leak that kills somebody is usually a small one, a loose gasket, a rusted-through pipe, nothing you'd notice looking underneath the car in a parking lot with a flashlight. A battery-powered carbon monoxide detector costs less than the fan I told you to buy, clips right onto a vent, and it will scream at you long before you'd ever smell or feel a thing. If you're not going to give up the idea of running an engine for comfort entirely, at minimum put a detector between you and that mistake. But the better answer is still the one I gave you already. Don't idle the engine to sleep, ever, full stop. So here's what I'd do before the sun's up tomorrow. Get the free stack straight in your head first, the truck stops, the posted rest area limits, the BLM 14-day rule, the safe parking lots if your city runs one. Then put $79 toward Boondoggers Welcome, because permission beats tolerance every time, and one avoided RV park night pays the whole membership back. Then spend the last $20 on film for the glass and a fan for the air, because the sun doesn't care what your legal status is. It'll cook you either way if you let it. $96, $99 at the outside. That's the whole system, and it's the difference between a 140-degree box with your name on it and a quiet, moving, legal spot to close your eyes. What's the cheapest trick that ever got you through a bad night? And if you've slept rough yourself, I want to know what actually worked for you out there, not what somebody told you should work. What did? I read every one of these. Stay cool, stay sharp, and remember, the people the world walks past know things the rest of us forgot.